We already know that it is theorized that humans have evolved from an ape-like organism into what we are today. Now today in this video we're going to look at the hominid sequence, which means what do we call each individual species as it changes from that ape-like ancestor to where we are today. Now this table provides a lovely summary of the different species we're going to look at, their each individual features, their face shape, their teeth, and so on, and specific examples of each species and how old they are, where they were discovered. And this is the crux of what you need to know about hominid species. So print it, learn it. The first organism that we're going to look at is in a group called the Australopithecus or the Australopithecines. Now this is the oldest known genus of the tribe Hominini, and they are different from African apes because they're the first ones to walk bipedally. And now we know bipedal means upright on 2 feet. This skull is of an Australopithecus afarensis. Now the brain capacity is only about 400 cc, which is pretty small, much more ape-like than it is human-like. The skeleton on the right is of Lucy. Now this is a fossil that is reckoned to be about 3.2 million years old, and it was found in 1973 in Ethiopia. Now only bits and pieces of the skeleton was found, not the entire skeleton. When you look at a close-up of the skull, you can actually see that the darker gray areas is the actual fossilized bones that was found. So the white is clay that is used to stick these skull bits and pieces together so that a complete skull can be molded and formed and shaped to give us an indication of what this organism looked like. If you think back of the distinguishing characteristics that humans have, this skull is not human. You can see that there is no forehead. The skull area available for brain space is much smaller, and then the face space is bigger. The jaw is protruding, and there's eyebrow ridges. So this has more ape-like features than it has human features. Australopithecus afarensis is believed to be bipedal, and this is in fact a footprint that is theorized or believed to have made by Australopithecus afarensis, and it's called the Laetoli footprint. Now this is also found in Tanzania, and if you look closely at the toe, you can see the toe is not divergent. It's more non-divergent like in a human. However, the foot looks more flattish. So the foot is flat like in that of an ape. However, the big toe is non-divergent, so like in a human. So it's somewhere in between. Australopithecus africanus is slightly different to Australopithecus afarensis. The brain capacity is 480 cc, which means it's a little bit bigger, which puts the average weight of the entire organism at about 45 kilograms, so it's quite small. We also see from the foramen magnum that it was completely bipedal, completely walking upright. And if we have a look at the upper jaw, the dental arch is not as rounded as it would be in a human, but it's not as elongated as that found in apes. So again, it is something between an ape and a human. It's more rounded than that of an ape, and the canines are much smaller. So this organism had an omnivorous diet. This skull is of the Taung child, which is a fossil skeleton or fossil skull that was discovered by Professor Raymond Dart. Now, this skull is of a child, and the teeth again are human-like. The dental arch is a bit more rounded. There is not a diastema. So again, it's believed to be an intermediate species between apes and modern humans. Mrs. Pless is quite a well-known fossil. This one was also found in Sterkfontein by Dr. Robert Broom, and again it provides evidence that supports the theory that Taung child and Mrs. Pless is an intermediate species between apes and humans. The photo on the right-hand side is of the model of Lucy found in Marupeng Visitor Center. The image on the left-hand side is a video clip of an Australopithecus afarensis, or africanus rather, sorry, in a National Geographic documentary. And on both of these, it's interesting to see that the arms are longer than the legs. There's a flattened nose, forward projecting jaw. So all criteria or characteristics that's more ape-like. But there's still a lot of things that we can't really say is true about this model. Like we discussed before, the hair or the fur on the body, the facial expression, the earlobes, the color of the eyes. Those are all things that's an artist's impression of the skeleton. So remember, Lucy was a very partial skeleton. Only bits and pieces were found. And then an artist creates this beautiful model of a fully developed ape-like creature. This model looking like this obviously makes a very good argument that humans evolved from an ape-like creature, and this one, Lucy, is an intermediate species between the two. On the right here, we see the entrance to Sterkfontein Caves at Marupeng. Now, Littlefoot, that you can see here in Ron Clark's hands on the left-hand side photo, was also a fossil found at Marupeng in the Sterkfontein Caves. Now, interestingly enough, if we zoom in on the photo of the bones that he's holding, you can see the parts of the ankle bones that he's holding on the left of the screen. That's the fossil that was discovered. However, the big foot that he's holding, the entire foot that he's holding in his left hand on the right of the photo, that's the artist's impression. So it's a very different picture. There's no toe on the left-hand side on the fossil, yet they claim that this is what the real foot would look like. Just questionable. I'm just asking. Littlefoot was discovered quite some years ago, and since then excavation has continued, and now they have almost found a complete skeleton. Sadly, it's still stuck in the rock. And you can see the two gentlemen that's actually responsible for taking out the bone out of the rock. Stephen and Nkwane is on the photo here with Ron Clark. Now you can see on the right-hand side where the bone is still inside the rock. Now remember, a skeleton that fossilizes inside a rock actually becomes rock itself. We call that process mineralization. Lucky we can see that the fossilized bone is a slightly lighter color than the rock surrounding it. But it would be Stephen Nkwane's job to actually sit and chisel out carefully this white rock, which is the bone, from the surrounding rock. The Australopithecines evolved into the Homo species, which we are going to look at now. And the distinctive features of the Homo species is obviously that they have much larger brains, which could indicate intelligence, so which would make them able to manipulate tools, control fire, and even communicate. And also major changes to their skulls. In other words, the brow ridges, the flatter face, the skull ridges, and so on. The first Homo species we're looking at is called Homo habilis, commonly known as handyman. Now, handyman was found in Tanzania along with some tools that it used. And the tools are called Oldowan simply because the fossil was found in the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. Now, handyman had a brain capacity of about 800 cc's, which is larger than Australopithecine, which implies that this organism was more intelligent, and probably that's proven by the fact that there's tools around it. The skull is slightly rounded, but you can see the brain space area is bigger than you would find in Australopithecines. Habilis evolved into Homo erectus, of which Turkana boy is probably the most famous example. Now, he was found by Richard Leakey, and its brain capacity is 1,000 cc's. Now, that's much bigger and almost the size of a modern human brain. The foramen magnum shows complete upright bipedalism. And if we look at the skull more closely, we can see that it's much more rounded, the face is much flatter, and the jaw much smaller than that of apes. There are still, however, large eyebrow ridges and not that distinct forehead, so it's much more human-like than Homo habilis or the Australopithecines, yet it's not completely Homo sapien yet. This is what Homo erectus looks like at Marupeng Visitor Center. They've put skin over him, given him a beautiful nose and some eyes. But again, when you look at that, you realize that the shape of the nose, the color of the eyes, even the skin color, are all an artist's impression. Although if you look at the picture, it kind of looks very realistic. Homo erectus looks much more like your Uncle Bob next door than the ape in the zoo. So now that we've looked at all these organisms, if we look back at the table I gave you initially, perhaps draw an arrow on the left-hand side of your table from the top to the bottom. As you look at the organisms from the top going downward, there will be an increase in complexity in all their facial features, their brain size, and all the other things will develop more and more human-like as we move from the top towards the bottom of this table. The Australopithecines will be more ape-like, simpler in not using tools, smaller brain size, more ape-like features, and as we go along, by the time we get to Homo sapiens, we have complete human-like features, large brain, complex tools, highly intelligent. According to this table, Neanderthals are slightly less evolved than Homo sapiens. They are our cousins. We didn't evolve from them. Now remember, in a different lesson, we actually chatted about the debate that's going on currently between whether Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were close related cousins, or are they just subspecies of one another? Because now that the Neanderthal Genome Project has been taking place, there is genetic evidence that either we are closer related than was initially believed, or we crossbred with Neanderthals. This model of a Neanderthal skull shows a large eyebrow ridges and a slightly protruding lower face or lower jaw, but overall, it looks very human-like. So this might be a complete different species or just archaic humans. And with a facial reconstruction with clay, it looks even more human-like. So, as I said, it's an ongoing debate, and we'll probably only know the answer in 10 or 20 years from now. Until then, it's still just interesting to think about what the truth is and what's just theory.